So we've been speaking of these wings, the wings that represent love. The right wing is love, the left wing is fear. But in essence, it also represents this idea that when we do a mitzvah and when we connect with God in general, we connect with all of our heart, with all of our soul. We were speaking about how um, tefillin, if you recall, have to be in the head, not just on the head, which really means, and this pertains to every mitzvah, that we should internalize every mitzvah. That every mitzvah is not just a deed that needs to be performed, but a deed that needs to be performed with our entire intention, with the entire kavanah. Um, Now, this does not mean, as we've emphasized many times, that if you don't have it, if you don't feel it, that you shouldn't do it. You should still do it. And that deed will eventually also trigger the heart. But ideally, in order really to soar to the heavens, that's what the idea of of these wings represent. Then we need to have a whole heart and soul into each and every mitzvah. By doing so, by the way, also we refine the heart. We refine the inner being, we refine the psyche. And that's part of the benefits, if I can use that word, in doing so. So that's really the big idea. Yeah, let's continue at the bottom of the page 76, as Margot just mentioned here. Does anyone want to read? Anyone? The inner concealed power.
I'll read if nobody else wants to.
Thank you.
Okay, get going. Okay. The inner concealed power of the soul to think, to feel, and to act is a spiritual attribute whose connection to the I, to our existence within a body, is quite tentative. Seemingly, it should be within us, but in fact, it neither relates to nor acts on our revealed consciousness. Everyone's soul include aspects of the most sublime nature, powers of prophecy, holiness, and purity. And yet they are abstractions unrelated to our normal sense of self. The fact that one's neshama is a part of God may not always affect our lives. True, the highest level of the soul, the yechida, is linked directly to the Ein Sof, but this is irrelevant. Of what importance is it? The answer is when a person actualizes it. When people speak of a good person, they make no mention of the root of his neshama or its purity. The intent is rather to note the expressions of his neshama in this worldly context. The highest and most concealed levels of the soul have very little to do with the I, except for those occasions when one purposefully directs his attention to them. When a person does not employ his innermost soul to perform a tangible act, the neshama is no more related to him than to any other individual. Later on in chapter 32, the author will discuss the interlinking on a certain transcendent and shrouded level of all souls. The connection, however, between the supernal source of souls and earthly man is not one that is inherently serviceable. At best, it is a casual relationship. In the same sense, the love hidden in the recesses of one's mind and heart does not innately relate to one's physical being. There is no evidence of it in the soul's powers manifest in the body. The evidence is only at the source level of human character attributes that is veiled in the heart and mind. And for this reason, the soul itself does not become attached to actions on the physical plane.
Right. And I love what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here, and that is that when we say that a person is good, then obviously you're referring to the expression of his goodness, not his goodness, because everyone is good. Everyone has a divine soul. Inherently, everyone is good. That's what Judaism believes. Now, not everyone expresses that inherent goodness, the divine soul that they possess. So when we say that a person is good, it's referring really to the expression of that soul, to the ability of the person to really not just conceal his goodness, but to reveal it in the most shining way. You know, it reminds me of that story, like it or not, but it's still, the message is still powerful. Story of this baby camel in a zoo. Do you remember that story? The baby camel was born in a zoo and it goes to its mother and it says, "Wow, mom, why did God create us with such long eyelashes?" And the camel says that's because, camels go in the desert for miles and miles and miles, and sometimes the sandstorms, and we have to protect our eyes. So God gave us long eyelashes to do so. The camel says, "Okay, that's great. Why did God create us with these massive feet?" And the camel again says, "That's because we go in the desert and we walk for miles and miles. So these feet help us walk that long." And then camel says, "And what are these bumps here on the back that we have?" "Oh, that's because we walk in the desert for miles and miles and we need to store food and water, and that helps us go on for sometimes weeks and weeks without any food or water." And then the baby camel turns to the mother and says, "Well, if God created us with all of these gifts, what are we doing stuck in a cage in a zoo?" And in many ways, this is exactly what this paragraph here is saying, that God created you with the divine soul, but He created you with the divine soul not for you to keep it in a cage, in a zoo, but for you to express it fully. And the greatest travesty, really, to the human being is when a human being does not express his divine soul or is anything less but the expression of his divine soul. And this is really the power of the Benoni. The Benoni, what differentiates the Benoni, which really, again, what this chapter particularly, but what this book is all about, the power of the Benoni is that he is not only cognizant of his divine soul, but he does everything in his power, and not just again in action, but also internally with his wings to express that divinity, to make sure that those eyelashes and those long feet or big feet and the bumps in the back are are used as they were based on the purpose of their creation. And I would say that this very much connects to this month of Elul, if I may connect this idea to it, because here we are standing, what is it now? And 9 days before Rosh Hashanah, something like that. Rosh Hashanah is next week on Monday evening. So something like that. Yeah. 8 days, 9 days before Rosh Hashanah. And on Rosh Hashanah, it's interesting because Rosh Hashanah was chosen as Rosh Hashanah as the beginning of the year because that is the creation of Adam and Eve. According to the Talmud, the world was created on the 25th of Elul. 6 days later, Rosh Hashanah, is when Adam and Eve were created. And in many ways, in this paragraph, we have the idea of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is giving birth to your creation, to your Adam, to your Eve. And what that really means is that don't just be a quarter of yourself or half of yourself, be the full expression of yourself. What's yourself? That divine soul. So allow it to be expressed fully. Use all of the God-given skills and talents that you have, that you possess, and make them shine. Otherwise, if you keep them within, then why have them all together? It's like the baby camel in a zoo. And this is really, I think this is no coincidence that we are studying this now, because that's really what Rosh Hashanah is about, giving birth to ourselves, to our inner selves. That's what it's all about. Now, just to add just one little thing, again, I don't want this to be just a monologue, so please feel free to share your comments and your disagreements. But just to add one thing, it's interesting because um, just speaking about the birth of Adam, or we are called Adam. Every human being in Hebrew, human being is called Adam, Adam. Now, and it's interesting because Adam it really comes from two separate words. On the one hand, it comes from Adam, which means Adama, because we came from the ground, from the soil. That's what it means. Adama means soil. We say that in funerals. We say that, Min afarata vel afarta shuv. You came from dust and you will go back to dust. But on the one hand, that's what it means. Adam means soil. But on the other hand, Adam also comes from this verse in Ezekiel, which means Adameh la'elyon, as the Kabbalists point out. Adameh means I will resemble. I will resemble God. I will resemble the upper one, Adameh la'elyon. And in many ways, we have two facets within us. There is a facet that pulls us downwards, that is physical, materialistic, that is like the soil. And there's a facet of ours that wants to resemble God, that we were created with the image of God. And I want to resemble God, not just in essence, but also in every thought, speech, and action, as the Tanya says. And in many ways, the only true expression of that divine soul is then when we can transform that Adama, that soil, into something that resembles God, to Adamela Elyon, resembles God. That's how you express your full divine soul. And one has to ask himself, especially on Rosh Hashanah, when we again are giving birth to ourselves, do we resemble God in our speech? Our thought is, not everyone can achieve that. Even the Tanya says, thoughts are powerful, but at the end of the day, they stay inside. Yes, we have to work on our thoughts, but at least in our speech, what I'm about to say is going to resemble God and His light, His love, or is it going to resemble something very lowly? And true with actions too. In many ways, that's how one can navigate himself. Am I today an Adama or am I today an Adame? Am I soil today or am I my God today? Am I resembling God? They say there's a cute way of putting it even in the English language. But speaking of soil, they say that the difference between soil and soul is one letter. Soil as an I and soul as a U, right? And if you want to focus just on your I, on your physical needs, on your materialistic self, on your soil, then yes, you'll be as low as the soil. But if you focus on the you, which is the letter that soul has, on the other, if your whole purpose is to serve, then you're a soul. Then you're resembling God. So how do you express this divine goodness? Because you have to, don't be that baby camel in a zoo, by asking yourself, am I going to resemble God or not? And that's really the big idea, and that's the idea again of Rosh Hashanah that we're about to celebrate. We can continue, but again, I'd love to hear your comments and disagreements. That's what it's all about.
I have a comment to make.
Yes, please.
Um, the last few weeks, you've been talking about the wings of love and fear.
Yes.
Uh, I think fear is the wrong word to use because
Good
fear,
point.
be motivated by fear. I mean, you could be motivated by fear to do things, but to be in a holy way, the word really means to revere,
Right.
to have the wings of love and revere in the sense of awe, as compared to being scared and doing something because you're scared. That's the wrong reason to fly.
Right. No, very powerful and absolutely. I think I've always been bothered by that translation of the word yirah. Yes, we translate it as fear, or even like in the book of Mishlei, that word appears quite a bit, yireh, fear. But it's not the right translation. Thank you for pointing that out. Reverence is a better translation, or is maybe a better translation. To go deeper into it, it's interesting because the word yirah, right, the word that we're trying to grapple with here, which many translate as fear, and as William pointed out, it's not a good translation, also means in Hebrew to see, right? Yirah comes from the word ligaot, and that's really where the meaning of the word is. That we are leading our lives as if we are seeing God. And when you see God, you have the sense of accountability, of tremendous respect, of not doing that which God does not want you to do. I've said this before, but I remember hearing, and I'll never forget it because it's really one of the most brilliant pieces of advice. But there's just a wonderful human being in our community. Many of you know him. And he was an alcoholic for many years, and thank God he's been sober for a very long time. And he said that the best piece of advice he ever received, and I've shared this in the past, is that when he asked his mentor, I don't know what to do because I go to all these different events and parties, and there's often alcohol in the room, and alcohol is still a temptation for me. So I really don't know what to do. And his mentor told him, look, it's very easy. Before you go into the room where the alcohol is, open the door and don't go in immediately. First, let God go in. Wait a few seconds and let him go in fully. And once God is in the room, and once you know that he's in the room, then you won't have the temptation anymore. Then you can go into the room too. And in many ways, that's what Yirah means. You see God in the room. You see him. So you're afraid of God. You're not afraid of God, but you have this, like you said, this reverence. I'm not going to do alcohol now because God is here. I can see him.
Rabbi,
Yes.
it could also be that not only that we see God, but God, it reminds us that God sees us.
Mm. Very
Dennis
good.
Prager, Dennis
Yeah.
Prager says that if you put a camera in in a workplace, it doesn't even have to be connected, that people act better to each other and to the
Yes.
job.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Rabbi,
it
can I
goes
add
both
something?
ways. And then, like you said, there are scientific studies about this, right? That people who feel that they are watched become nicer people.
Rabbi,
Yes.
you said something, I think the other day about that you imagine that that every word you say could be your last, or every action you do could be your last. Like, how would you want to be seen,
Right.
right? Like, could you imagine, right? How would you want to be seen? So
Right.
maybe that person, so maybe it's not about fearing God, but like imagine going into the party and you take a shot of tequila and you die right there, right? They would be like, "Oh, yep, he died with a shot of tequila in his hand." So I guess what I'm saying is,
Right.
so instead of fearing God, it could just be, how do you want to be remembered?
That's right. How do you want to be seen? I love that because, just to tie it back to the Torah, it's interesting. And this is also coming up. The festival of Sukkot is coming up. There are three festivals in the year: Sukkot, Passover, and Shavuot. And the commandment in the Torah, when the temple was built and in existence in Jerusalem, and please God, the third temple will come soon. But the commandment was to, as the Torah itself says, to come to have these pilgrimages to the temple. But why? Lirot pnei Hashem Elokecha, to see the face of God, and then lirot is the vowels of the word lirot are changed from lirot to leraot, which means to be seen by God. So you come to the temple to see and to be seen. So there, you have again the root word of lirot is also yirah, which is wrongly translated as fear, but that's really what it means. Lirot and leraot, it's the same letters, just different vowels, but to see and to be seen. So it does go both ways.
Jonathan reminds me of the rabbi who said you should repent a day before you die, but you don't know when you're going to die, so you should repent every day.
That's it. That's right. Very good. It's an ethics of our fathers. Yeah. Yeah. Changes the way you see things when you have that feeling. And it goes down to the little details. Are you going to get into a silly argument if you're dying today? If someone cuts you in the street, are you going to react angrily? You're dying today. You don't have time for this. So it changes the way you see things completely. Very good. To see and to be seen. Okay. All right, let's continue unless there's more great ideas here. Every idea is a great idea. The idea that's a bad idea is the idea you did not share. Okay. If not, let's continue. So
Okay.
here, top of page 77, were it not for the fact.
Were it not for the fact that the Holy One, blessed be He, fuses and unites them together with the action. As mentioned earlier, the Holy One, blessed be He, unites a good thought to the deed. Hence they are called good thought, for they are not actual awe and love in a revealed state in the heart, but only in the intelligence of the brain and in the recesses of the heart, as mentioned above. The good thought is the love and awe of God existing within thought alone, the notion of, yes, this is worthwhile. But because the thought is unconnected to any activity one might do, rather each is discrete, God unites thought with deed, integrating them on an inner and essential level. Some commandments already have wings. Others need to be outfitted with them by God, who takes the inherently distant love and awe, the wings, and joins them to action.
Right. So when you have this full actualization of the soul, this full uh, activation also of the wings of awe, as he calls it here, which is a better word, awe and love, or seeing and love, as we just said, seeing and be seen, being seen as love and love, then it almost naturally has to unite you with deed. If I'm madly in love with someone, I want to express this love. In whichever way, right? There are 5 languages of love, or maybe even more. So I'll pick the language, but I can't just keep it inside. Same with God. If I'm madly in love with God and I'm activating those wings, then I want to do a mitzvah. It's almost my natural state. And that's really what this means. When the Talmud says that God unites a good thought with deed, it's not just a good thought. It's not just something, okay, that appeared in my mind and went away. This good thought is much deeper than that. As we said, it's the activation of the soul. When you've activated your soul, obviously you'll unite that activation with the deed, because otherwise it's really not, it's a false activation. The wings didn't take off. And really this is what this means. And there's a great Hasidic story about a Rebbe, I forget who it was, but a Rebbe who was studying late at night, and he was studying next to the crib of his newborn child. And then he looks at his newborn child, and he's activated his wings within, and he has this tremendous desire to give him a kiss. But he stopped himself for a second. And he said, if I give him a kiss, first of all, he's newborn, he's sleeping, he won't know, and he won't even remember. So I'm doing it for me. So he held this love within. But again, if it's true love, it's got to be united with action. And he only expressed this love years later. Years later was his bar mitzvah, this newborn's bar mitzvah. And he decided to write a Hasidic discourse. And he said to himself, this will be my kiss. I will channel all the love that I had at that moment. And write this Hasidic discourse. This is a discourse that he'll cherish and certainly learn and remember. So that kiss will really be for him, not for me, not just to satisfy my love. And that's what he did. When this young child turned bar mitzvah, he said, look, I have something to give you. And he gave him his Hasidic discourse, told him the story, and he said, this is my Hasidic kiss. And many ways, it's a beautiful story, but again, it connects to what we're saying here, that when I have so much love, it's impossible not to express it. It's got to be united with deed. The question, though, will be, how do you unite it with deed? You unite it with the selfish deed just to make yourself feel good? Then that activation is not a pure one, or maybe it's not a full one. But if you unite it with a selfless deed, with a deed that really is there for the other, for the you, not for the I, remember, for the soul, not for the soil, then you know that unity of thought and action is as wholesome as it gets. And that's what it's all about.